Welcome back to the show right now to Harry Wilkinson. Harry is part of Net Zero Watch, fantastic organization campaigning to highlight the serious economic and societal implications of expensive and poorly considered climate and energy policies. Welcome back, Harry. How are you doing?
Hello, good to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to see you again. And just before you came on air live, I was just thinking this is the first time we've spoke since obviously the general election that was held on the 4th of July. And no doubt you'll have been watching the events unfolding after that very, very closely, not just really on a political level, but of course in the area of which you tend to focus, which is this whole net zero business. So Ed Miliband, he's now the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero. That's quite a mouthful and quite a title. And he seems to be lauding the fact that he's got off to a flying start. Flying start to doing what?
That's right. I mean, we were a bit concerned when he came in. We were always expecting him to be more, we say, ambitious in the lingo, but it generally means more destructive of wealth, more destructive of people's opportunities, of existing jobs. And so Miliband has always been one of the greenest of ministers, and we've seen even before the Labour Party got into power, how he's maybe been going a bit further than Keir Starmer was comfortable with. This £28 billion pledge was, scaled back, and that pledge was abolished. So it's hard to know at this stage where, the leadership is standing, whether he's got off to a flying start and he's had the blessing of the leadership or not. One big development in the week gone by was this decision not to allow new licenses. And, for various companies that were applying, this process was underway. And so there was a question about which licenses would actually be granted or not. And the government came back with a denial. So I think this is a key test for Miliband. Is he going too far? He could potentially undermine his plans if he goes, too quickly. And Keir Starmer says, this is too risky. He's kind of pushing the Labour Party beyond what the British public are accepting. And these oil and gas licenses were vital. It's simply a question: do we want the oil and gas that we're using here in the UK to come from domestic sources, supporting jobs here, or do we want them to come imported from abroad? That means higher emissions at the end of the day, but it also means more reliance on foreign powers who we can't control. So this is a baffling decision, and it's got many people highlighting just what a risk Ed Miliband could be as Energy Secretary. We've also seen him steamroller these plans to have solar farms. Now, I tend to be someone who's in favour of a less regulated planning system. We have a hugely difficult planning system here in the UK where it's really difficult to build anything. And energy is one of those areas which are much affected by this. The problem with these solar farms is they won't produce much energy. We don't have good conditions for solar. They'll be expensive. They'll be subsidised. And ultimately, it will need to be backed up by fossil and other sources. So it's a huge waste of energy. We do need to get the planning system unlocked. But if we do it just for solar and wind, it would be a tragic waste because, one nuclear power station using that land could generate an enormous amount of energy, far more than you could generate with solar or wind. And so, that would surely be the much more productive use for that land rather than wasting all that political effort on solar. But it's clear that he's not wasting any time. He's trying to be as aggressive as he can and get all these policies out very, very quickly. So it's a fast-moving situation, and we'll be monitoring it very closely.
I I don't know if you've been watching. I'm sure you have. He's been putting out videos on social media platforms, and I don't know about you if you've seen these or not, but he appears almost giddy to me in them. It's almost like he's like I don't know. He's like this Mad Hatter type character that's bouncing around and he's skipping around in wind farms, and he's talking about team, we've got to get together, team, we've got to make this happen, and taking selfies with all his staff members. Has this power, I mean, like, let's face it, his type, his ilk are very much into their power and status. Has this appointment into this role, do you think it's gone to his head too quickly, that he's overstepping the mark? As you've said, maybe he's going a little bit too far with the North Sea licenses. Maybe that's a little bit further than Stormer would have liked him to go. Do you think he's flexing a little bit and testing his own boundaries to see what he can and can't get away with?
Well, he's always been a very social media focused politician, particularly since he lost the Labour leadership. I think he decided that he just didn't care anymore, and he would just do what he wanted to do, and that's reflected in his social media. But it does seem we have this disturbingly close relationship with the civil servants in his department, albeit yes, their duty is to work with him. There does seem a lot of glee, a lot of a feeling that he is one of them. Who can, take the reins and push ahead with what they were wanting to do already. And, Conservative ministers, when they were in power, Claire Coutinho modestly started to push back on the green agenda during her final months as Energy Secretary. And, even very modest pushback was met with enormous hostility by her own department, who were supposed to be working with her. So, already we have this massive change. It's not hard to see that the civil servants are just absolutely delighted to have Ed Miliband in there. And these kind of social media videos, just show that off. But, I think he is tempting fate. You asked about, is he flexing his muscles, seeing what he can get away with? This ultimately could be a risky strategy. I don't think the public will appreciate such a flippant approach being taken with what are very serious matters, the energy security of our country. He's given almost no attention to getting the cost of electricity down. Now, I think decarbonisation would actually be much easier and cheaper if you focus, rather than picking every technology in every sector, but just getting the price of electricity down, because that would enable electrification to happen in a number of areas. But Ed Miliband doesn't seem to be focused on that at all. He's barely mentioned getting the cost of electricity down. He's mentioned the cost of living crisis. He's not said what he's going to do about that. He seems to believe in this myth of cheap wind. We at Net Zero Watch have done a huge amount of work debunking that. You look at the actual financial accounts of wind farms, you can see how expensive they are. That information is all on the public record. And of course, even those high costs of wind farms that we can see, that doesn't include all the backup costs and the costs to the grid of incorporating all this intermittent variable wind energy, and those costs are very significant as well. So, he's living in a fantasy land if he thinks wind is going to bring us cheap electricity.
I wanna talk about because the three main things that he's come out with is, number one, the North Sea licenses. Number two was onshore wind farms, and number three was approvals for these huge solar farms, leaving residents in the area shell shocked. 2,500 acre solar farms. So let's look at the wind and the solar aspect of what he's done, the axe that he's swinging at the minute, and look at the implications of that as well. What does it actually translate to in terms of cost savings, if anything, and what impact does it have on the environment? So we'll do that when we come back, Harry, in just 30 seconds time. So please stay tuned for more here on TNT, today's News Talk.
Big news! We do have some big news. Big news, big news.
TNT Radio News.
Big
Matt
news.
Boyland here with your TNT headlines. A defiant Donald Trump has vowed not to let Saturday's assassination attempt dictate his schedule. The former president arrived in Milwaukee on Sunday ahead of the Republican National Convention, just 24 hours after he was shot in the ear. Serious questions are now being raised over how the shooter managed to position himself on a roof just 130 metres from Trump's stage. Stay with us here on TNT as we dissect every angle of the historic moment.
This July, we're taking life seriously. Cardiac arrest is scary and more common than you might think. Did you know that every year nearly 9 million people will experience a cardiac event outside of hospital? Would you know what to do? I'm Australian actor Steve Bastoni, and I'm urging everyone to learn CPR as part of our Don't Die July campaign. Visit don'tdiejuly.com and sign up today, because you can't put a price on life.
Are you enjoying listening to TNT Radio? Do you think we're doing a good job? Then please let us know. Why not leave us a like or a positive review or comment on Facebook, Gab, or Getter? Help us get the word out as we cover the biggest topics of our time on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
Okay, very happy to be talking this morning live with Harry Wilkinson from Net Zero Watch, fantastic organization that you can follow, by the way, on the X Twitter platform at Net Zero Watch, and they also have their own website, netzerowatch.com. So, Harry, we've talked about the North Sea licenses. Now, let's look at onshore business with regards to wind farms and solar farms. And just as I'm talking, ironically, they call these things farms, so it's a wind farm, a solar farm, but they're going on land that could ironically be used, or is being used as farmland that actually produces crops that feed us in a cost-effective manner. Isn't it odd that they're branding these things farms when they're nothing of the sort?
It's strange. I mean, that's just a piece of terminology that people have used for a while, but clearly there's a question, what's the best use of this land? Some people are saying, well, you know, if farmers can make more money off of a wind farm or a solar farm, you know, why not just let the farmers have the freedom to put what they want on that land? I think what I would say there is, you know, yes, that's all very well, but we're looking at projects that are going to be subsidized. We've seen the latest round of auctions for various renewable technologies, offshore wind, onshore wind, solar. You know, the prices of those technologies have all gone up in the latest round, so that idea of cheap renewables, you know, is debunked by the fact that the prices that we're offering, state-mandated prices, not free market prices, you know, those prices have just risen. And so, you know, while offshore wind is now over £100 per megawatt hour, you know, we see onshore wind is over £80 per megawatt hour. This is all more than you can generate with gas. So these are technologies that are going to be subsidized by the taxpayer. They're going to push up electricity prices to more than they would be otherwise. This isn't a natural occurring thing that you might see in the countryside. This is something that's being placed there by government subsidy. And of course, you know, farmers are going to want to benefit from those subsidies. But if we're thinking about what's a rational energy system, what are the best technologies to be using here in the UK, it wouldn't be wind and solar, particularly when you look at our onshore sites for wind, for example. The best sites, those best wind speeds, are on higher grounds. They're in Scotland, they're in Wales, the West Country. You know, those are worse farmland areas. Those sites have been largely taken already. So when you're reducing the planning restrictions on, you know, lower lying land, mostly in England, you know, you're not looking at the best sites for wind. You know, only really in Cornwall do you have good sites for solar as well, or at least relatively better ones than the rest of the country. You know, England and Wales, the United Kingdom, is not the place in the world where you would, you know, choose to have solar.
Yeah, and that's the thing that, you know, it doesn't seem to be factored into these equations when they're talking all this rhetoric about this is the way forward, this is how we're going to, you know, conquer this plan that we have. you have to factor in sunshine for solar panels, and you have to factor in wind for wind farms. So if you don't have wind, then the wind farms are pretty much rendered obsolete. And ditto for the solar panels. Like, I'm looking around me right now, and the area that I live in, up in the north of Ireland, it's very overcast most of the year. It rains for most of the year. It's highly unusual to see sunshine, and there are a lot of people around here that have their houses, bedecked with solar panels, which is fine if you can grab a bit of sunshine now and then and, generate a little bit of electricity. But, to maximize something like that, it has to be sunny more often than not. And if it's not sunny more often than not, then, you're chasing like a dog chasing its own tail. You're never going to get anywhere.
Well, yes, some people will say it's not for us to say that, wind and solar aren't going to work any more than it is for the government. What we need, a genuinely ambitious government would say, what we need to do here is have real competition. If you make wind and solar farms back up their energy supplies, if you make them absorb that cost of the backup and then compete with other technologies on a sort of firm power basis, then you would really have genuine competition, and we would be able to discover what the cheapest energy technologies were and what the best mix of energies to have was. So, we need to see competition reveal to us the true energy prices here. Competition is what's been missing from the energy market for a long time now. Under Nigel Lawson, we had a great liberalisation of the energy market here in the UK in a way that was then copied in many other countries, and it drove long-term reductions, both in actually emissions as well, because we moved from coal to gas eventually, and also, cost reductions in electricity. We've now reversed that. We've started increasing electricity prices more and more ever since the mid-2000s, when renewables have been an increasing part of the grid. We've just seen electricity prices rise and rise. So, it just doesn't fit the facts when people are saying that wind is cheap. What we've actually seen is, as renewables have become an increasing part of the grid, prices rise and rise.
Yeah, the thing with this is, sadly, it won't be until these massive bills start dropping in on people's doormats that they do, or into their inboxes as it now is, that the days of paper bills are starting to become obsolete, that people will realise what a folly that this is. And we're not even 2 weeks in to this new Labour government, and these are three massive talking points that we're talking about today. Not even 2 weeks in. Talking about North Sea licenses, we're talking about wind farms onshore, and we're talking about solar farms. It'll probably be another month or so before we speak again. I shudder to think what Miliband will have concocted in that time, but no doubt we'll be in a position to discuss it here. Harry, I really appreciate your input as always. netzerowatch.com. Check out the website and give them a following on social media. Thank you again, Harry. Have a great day.